Aiy-yu-kwee, now Melita, and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian. And today I will be talking about my October wrap-up. Now, for the month of October, I had wanted to participate in the Hocus Pocus Readathon, and this was my TBR. I can tell you right now that I didn't read very many of these, but let's get into my stats. For October, I did read 6 books, and to be about 2,038 pages for the month, which equates to approximately 65.74 pages per day in the month of October. I read 2 physical books and 4 audiobooks. However, one of those 4 I did read a little bit physically, but it was mostly audio, so I'm counting it mostly for audio. In terms of genre, I read 3 nonfictions, which included biographies and feminist essays. I also had 1 horror, 1 fantasy horror, and 1 contemporary literary fiction. For ratings, I had 1 3-star, 1 3.5 star, 3 4 stars, and 1 5-star. A 3.91 average for the month of October. For own voices, I have Indigenous, Black, and Caucasian. The literary fiction, it had LGBTQ rep in it, but I don't know for sure if it's own voices or not. I couldn't find much on the author. And like I said, I was hoping to do the Hocus Pocus Readathon, which is a month-long readathon for the month of October, hosted by Alyssa from Pages and Ink and Tiffy from Where Wolfius. And basically, this is a readathon that has 3 teams. There is witches, or the Sanderson sisters, the undead, as well as the trick-or-treaters. Basically, each of these teams have prompts. Each prompt you do encourages you to read a certain book. Once you finish that book, you earn points for your team. Whoever's team has the most points at the end of the month wins, essentially. And each team has their own group book. If you aren't able to get the group book, then you can substitute it for a book that kind of follows the same line. So like I was part of the team Undead. Our group book was The Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. I was unable to acquire this book for October, so Tiffy and Alyssa had said that The Bone Witch by Rin Chapiko could replace Cemetery Boys as the group book. So checking today, which is October 31st, so it is Halloween right now, Team Undead has a 1,000-point lead on the Sanderson sister, with trick-or-treaters having behind at least by 1,000 points. So not that I helped too much with Team Undead. I didn't really follow my TBR all that much. Yeah, I did not get to very many of these, if any, but I will tell you the books I did get to. The first book I read in the month of October was Apple from Skin Decor by Eric Gansworth. This is a memoir written in verse, and it also has different multimedia in here every so often. I believe there's paintings and photos and paintings of photos. And this basically, it follows Eric Gansworth's life and how he kind of picks apart the slur of apple. Apple is a slur used towards Indigenous people who they look native, but they don't act native. This was a very interesting book. I received this art copy from Levine Corrido, so thank you to them. And I also want to thank Libro FM for gifting me an advanced listener's copy. So for the most part, I listened to most of this. It wasn't towards the end that I started really reading it physically. This book came out October 6th, so it is out now. And it's really just interesting. There was a lot of things in here, as you can tell from the last little bit, that I started marking up just because I related to it, or I understood certain aspects, or like just different sections in here. I would like to reread this again physically so I can mark it up even further, because I remember there was bits in like the first 3/4 of the book that I definitely could relate to. This book is, I think, marketed towards young adult readers, or even like middle grade. And I've seen critiques saying that they don't understand how or why, because they don't think it would appeal to middle grade readers. I honestly think they don't give enough credit to middle grade or young adult readers. I think that the fact that for the most part this is a memoir written by an Indigenous author, and it's written in verse, so it's a fairly easy read to get through. There are content warnings for residential schools, and the impact of colonization on people, as well as the effects of residential schools. So just bear that in mind. I believe there's also a family death, so grief and loss. But yeah, I don't think they give enough credit to young readers. I think that it's really just arbitrary, as all of this is. It's like, I don't think I would have been interested, just because at the time I thought they taught us nonfiction as not fun. That's how we remembered it. So that kind of turned me off of nonfiction. However, if I feel like I would have been able to read something that wasn't by an old white guy, I probably would have picked it up. So that's just my thoughts on it, though. The next book I read was a part of my Hocus Pocus Readathon, and I'm happy that I was able to get to it and get through it, and that was The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I was gifted this copy. I'm not saying by who. If you want to know more, just check out my summer book haul. But yeah, I was gifted this finished copy and was so happy to finally get to it. This book came out earlier this year, I believe midsummer it came out. And this book follows 4 Blackfeet men who end up going elk hunting. It's the last day of the season. They are getting desperate to fill their freezers, and so they go to a portion of the woods that they're not supposed to be hunting on, and end up shooting elk a little unethically. So years later, they are finding that they're being hunted and returned by elk-head women. We follow each of their perspectives, which is interesting and creepy, as well as elk-head women's perspective, which I found to be very interesting and eye-opening, really. And I thought it was an interesting perspective in that when she was creeping up on these men, there was one portion of me that was like wanting to scream at the book, telling the men to turn around to like catch her before she does something, and another part of me that just was like hoping she would succeed, if that makes sense. So there was like this weird anticipation of like, I wasn't making any noise because I wanted, like, thinking that my breathing too hard would affect her sneaking. So that was interesting. This is Stephen Graham Jones is quickly becoming a Indigenous Gothic master, which is awesome. And this book in particular was fairly stressful to read, particularly in the beginning. So content warning for death of animals. There's a multitude, as well as people, some graphic depictions of injuries, as well as there's just this particular chapter in here that it made me cringe, just because even though they were dead, pulling teeth was still it made me cover my mouth. I couldn't handle that. And I had to calm myself down, so I always read before I go to bed. This wasn't necessarily the best one to do that with, so I just bear that in mind. I also appreciate that the importance of basketball in this book. I know, so tribes and nations are not monolithic. However, we do share similar experiences. Basketball, I know, is an important recreational sport on a lot of reservations. Hoopa was no different. That's the reservation I grew up on, even though I'm part of the Yurok tribe. My family grew up on the Hoopa reservation. And I wasn't particularly into basketball. I remember trying once, not understanding it, getting hit in the face with a basketball, and I just cut it out of my life. However, for a lot of my cousins, that was how they got off the reservation and how they were able to get into schools. And so I really appreciated that aspect of this book. However, because it was an aspect and because Stephen Jones goes so in depth with basketball, there was a few passages that went over my head because I am not a basketball fan. So that's my opinion of it. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I particularly really enjoyed the ending of this. I thought it had a really good note to it. That book also fit morally great character for my prompt of the undead. So that was a prompt that was fulfilled, that was able to go towards my Hocus Pocus readathon. The next book I actually didn't really plan on reading for October. However, I was on a long wait list through my library to get to it, and because it took 6 months for it to actually get into my possession, I didn't want to squander that, so I read it in October, and that was Becoming by Michelle Obama. This is Michelle Obama's biography, memoir. And basically, it's about her growing up in Chicago, how she met Barack Obama, and how they ended up in the White House and into politics, despite her not wanting to be. So, and this was a really enlightening book. I believe I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. It was definitely a change of pace. And it was also just something that I particularly enjoyed because it helped me see these women as more than just celebrities, that they're people. And I think that's a good, it sucks that it took a memoir biography for me to realize that. I understand that they're women and that they're humans and that they're not just celebrities, but it's it helps acknowledge that for me in terms of knowing more of their background. And I really appreciated Michelle's background in particular. I've never read a book on politics or a political book at all, and that's what I was kind of afraid this would be, but I kept hearing great things about it, and it's not really, it's just Michelle Obama's life, and I absolutely enjoyed it. There was particular moments that I felt like I connected with, particularly when Michelle was talking about her dad. He ended up dying in her early adulthood, and having to deal with the aftermath of that, and being mad at the world because the world isn't suffering, but she is. She has to deal with the loss. She has to deal with having her heart broken because she lost an important family member in her life, and why isn't the rest of the world feeling as lost as she is? And I completely understand that. So that was definitely a moment in that book where I started bawling while I was driving. So, but yeah, I really appreciated Michelle's take on things. It was really cool to see what she was invested in when her and Barack had gone into the White House. The effects that it had on her kids, on Barack. It was all very, very interesting to me, and I really appreciated the book. It was just a really pleasant read. The next book was also kind of a spur of the moment read. I needed a book down to go on my drive down to Sacramento, and this was one that I had looked into before, and it was available through my library, so I just kind of picked it up on a whim, and that was The Witches Are Coming by Lindy West. This is a collection of stories, feminist stories by Lindy West. She's also the author of Shrill, which I have not read yet. But basically, this is kind of like a call to action, critical critique of how our society views feminists, and the constant belittling and badgering of women. I don't know, it was just kind of interesting to me. It was giving me some interesting viewpoints. I'm glad I'm not the only one that ends up having anxiety attacks about climate change. But it's a lot of it wasn't new to me. Yeah, it was a nice read for what it was. It got me through a drive. I can't say it was all that memorable, but I mean, like I said, I enjoyed it, but it was just kind of meh. So it was 3 stars for me. So I got this one to read along with House of Salt book club because it's their pick for October, and I ended up picking it up way sooner than I expected to. Mostly because shortly after it came out, it started getting criticism, and I had gotten it before I heard the criticism. And that is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. Now, I've heard good things about Naomi Novik. I have not read any of her other books. This book in particular is it's a dark academia. Enter the world of the Scholomance, which is a dark school for wizards. There are no teachers, there are no holidays, there are no grades. Basically, the school is the one that teaches you, and it teaches you based off your interests or your needs. Understand that there are no, it's very, very strange. Survival is the most important thing you can know in this school. So there are no friendships unless they're strategic. This book very much reminded me of college. The school was made for you, then you have advantages already set for you than any other of the students. So we follow Gadriel, or Elle, who is half Indian, but grew up with her white mother in Britain or Wales, and is destined to be a dark wizard. So says her paternal grandmother. Everyone kind of already has it out for Gadriel of thinking that she's a bad wizard. However, she's trying to prove that she doesn't have to be, that she's not going to be. Yeah, it's all very interesting. Now, where the conflict comes in is that after the beta readers had gotten the manuscript and gave it shining stars, Naomi Novik went in and edited and put in that locks or dreadlocks. She proceeded to stake the claim that locks were dirty and gross. So in this book in particular, leeches get into them, and that is a harmful stereotype. So since then, Naomi Novik has put out an apology letter saying that she will take it out of any of, so that it is in the book I have gotten. I guess there will be a reprint that it will take them back out, take that edit back out. However, there are other critiques on this book. For instance, because Gadriel is half Indian, it kind of portrays her as being filthy and smelly and just uncleanly. But that's kind of assuming that you're taking it out of the context of the book, because the Scholomance is a book is a school where you don't want to go anywhere alone. And because Gadriel is a loner, she can't bathe, or I'm not making excuses for Naomi Novik. I'm just saying, you have to kind of take it in context. However, Naomi Novik, in her apology letter about the locks, did apologize for any other critiques that may have been had on the book, but she didn't specifically point them out. I am not in a position to accept or anything Naomi Novik does. I just want you to be aware. Please find own voice reviews. But for the most part, I thought this was creepy. There are monsters in here for a bit, for the first couple of chapters in this book, I didn't like Gadriel at all. And then once I started to understand why she was so against everyone and understood her a bit more, she kind of tugged at some heartstrings there. So I definitely ended up enjoying this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I am cautiously optimistic about the rest of the series. I think that one can go for the prompt of undead or paranormal, but I'm not entirely sure. This next book was also one that kind of just I got on a whim because it was available through my library and it was something that I was interested in, and that is Mostly Dead Things by Kristen Arnett. This one follows Jessa Lynn. She ends up finding father's body after he successfully dies by suicide. After that happens, she kind of takes up the mantle of trying to run his failing business and keep her family together as they're all kind of crumbling apart. This family has issues. Jessa Lynn and her brother Milo were in love with the same woman, who ended up marrying Milo but still messed around with Jessa Lynn, had kids with Milo, and then left everyone behind. Their mother, Milo and Jessa's mother, is slowly coming apart as well. She's starting to sneak into the taxidermy shop and pose the animals in sexual poses in the window display. And ultimately, this is a book of why you need to talk to people. Is my overall. So for most of this book, I felt like it kind of irritated me. I dislike books where the main problem is that none of the characters are talking to each other. But that's kind of the point of this book, is that because everyone's kind of falling apart, Jessa Lynn and Milo are not only crumbling because their father has died, but also because the love of their life has left them. Their mother is falling apart because she lost her husband, because he was kind of a control freak and controlled her throughout their entire married life together, but also because she feels like she failed as a parent because her kids aren't processing any of this. So, and that's basically what this book is about. It's them processing. Jessa is finding that she has to relearn who these people are and in turn figure out who she is. So this is an interesting literary fiction, contemporary LGBTQ fiction. Jessa Lynn is a lesbian. She is the main character. I don't know if Kristen Arnett is own voices for this or not. Like I said, I couldn't find much of any information. So I could not tell you if this was accurate representation. Please, again, seek out own voice reviews. I thought it was a good message in terms of like talk to people, but at the same time, it was so frustrating that was 3/4 of the book. Jesse Belinsky narrated Mostly Dead Things, and I really enjoyed their voice. I could tell when it was Jessa talking versus when it was Milo. Her particular characteristics for Jessa Lynn's mother as well as her niece were fantastic. I enjoyed them. It was just the overall content that I was just like, oh my god, just talk to your mother. So it was fine. I gave it, I believe, 3.5 stars, though I may be lowering that to 3 stars. And that is it for the books that I've read for October. I am in the middle of a couple right now. So, Into the Drowning Deep was also on my TBR for Hocus Pocus Readathon. This would be put in for Binks or Zachary Binks. Right? Yeah, to read a book with dealing with family members. So I am currently reading Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant, also known as Shannon McGuire. So that will be finishing up my October TBR reads. And then my next book that I am currently reading is leading into Indigathon, but isn't on my Indigathon TBR, so we're already starting out great. But that is Future Home for the Living God, A Future Home of the Living God by Louise Erdrich. I don't know too much about this. So yeah, this one I've had for a while now. This one was one of a book of the month pick from November 2017. I have quite a bit of book of the month and actually restarted my subscription to it, so I'm going to have to start really getting back into these. But yeah, like I said, this wasn't on my original Indigathon TBR, but I figure because Louise Erdrich is an Indigenous author, that as long as it's an Indigenous author, I am doing good. So those are the physical books that I read for this month. I still have like three others. Yeah, 3 others in terms of audiobooks, but not bad. 6 books isn't bad. If you have read any of these books, I want to know what your thoughts are. Please comment down below, or if you want to find me on any other social media, please reach out. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Goodreads. I will have some social injustice links down in the description down below. Hopefully I will get this edited and up in a timely manner as opposed to waiting till the end of November. Please understand that social injustice is still going on throughout the world. Please do your research, please do your homework, share support where you can. Otherwise, we are still in a pandemic. So please wear your mask, wash your hands, stay 6 feet apart, and quit frickin' spreading it. We recently just had the highest case number recorded since the beginning of this pandemic. So what's that telling you? Yeah, otherwise, I hope that you are in the mental mindset to enjoy your reading, and I will talk to you again soon. Chew!